not turn on?
Testing.
No, it's on. The light doesn't do anything. I'll just leave it on. Okay.
Excellent. Hello and welcome to the special meeting and study session of the Governing Board of the Litchfield Elementary School District. Today is Tuesday, April 26th, 2022. This study session is now called to order. I would like to begin this study session with a moment of silence in honor of our day custodian from Wigwam Creek Middle School, Ms. Splieri, who recently passed away. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We will begin tonight's study session with agenda item 1B, which is a discussion of proposed boundary revisions to areas 24, 25, 26, and 38. Unfortunately, our Director of Facilities, Dan Ensign, is not able to be with us this evening, and so this will be presented by Executive Director Qualls.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Gunning, and our public. Tonight, we will be proposing boundary revisions for some of the West Side schools that would go into effect next school year. So we have a district growth committee, and we meet at least every 2 months to look at the developments that are coming in the next couple of years and our enrollment at each of our campuses. So we are recommending some new areas, 24E, 25B, 26, and 38. So this aligns with our pillars for student success and service. We're recommending what we believe is best for kids. We want to take the areas that currently do not have residents in the areas and shift those to other schools to relieve the overcrowding for Belen Soto. At this time, there'd be no financial impact. Who's impacted? Currently, there is no students residing in the affected areas. So the anticipated population will increase at Verrado Middle, Mabel, and Scott Libby with this change. So the purpose of the recommendation is to adjust the areas of the district with anticipated new homes and apartment complexes prior to the student population being established. So that way we aren't shifting students. As far as the timeline, on April 15th, notifications went out to residents, but also the owners of the properties. So anyone that was listed in the Maricopa County Assessor's information received a letter. Tonight, we're reviewing the recommendations. May 10th, we'll bring back an actual proposal to adopt the changes. And then, as I mentioned before, they would go into effect for the 22-23 school year. So if we look at the K-5 map, you see area 24, 25, 26, and 38. The purple schools, or the purple areas with lines through them, are the ones that we will be proposing a change for, and then also 26 and 38. In the middle school, it's the same areas. So if we look at 24 and 25, there's a new section created down in the bottom right corner of 24, which is 24E. That will be Windrose Apartments. And for the elementary school, we recommend that those students would go to Scott Libby rather than Belen Soto. If you look at 25B, Currently, where the purple line is, the big section at the top coming down, there's a purple line. That's currently what is 25B. So we're asking to increase that dog leg that's going up and then to the right. So originally, we thought that was going to be two different developments, and actually it's one development that's going to be in the 25B. The far east parcel of that, the southeast corner, is a different homeowner or landowner, but we recommend that these areas go to Scott Libby and then to Verado Middle for middle school. When we're looking at Area 26, you can see there's a development that's being etched in there. They've got their plotting done in the west side of parcel 26. So again, we're recommending these students actually go over to Mabel Pageant. And there is, up in the middle section at the very north of this, there is an old farm buildings, but I've researched it. I don't see any students coming from that parcel. Dan went by, doesn't really look like there's activity in the homes of those areas. So as far as we are aware, there's no students residing there. For Area 38, there are some homes being planned in the northwest corner right now. The big building you see in the southeast corner is Amazon. And then the smaller one up by the number 38 is the water company. So again, no residents in these parcels. And these again would go to Mabel Pageant for elementary and Verado Middle for middle school. You have any questions?
Jeremy Honak, I have a question.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
I'm trying to figure out, it appears that students that were formerly going to be Bell and Soto would be driving past Bell and Soto, like they're to the east of Bell and Soto. They'd be driving to the west to get to Verado Middle, or I'm not sure, or Verado Elementary. Is that correct?
So they would not necessarily be driving past. We would be transporting those students. But yes, there could be students that are passing a school to go down to another school. But Belen Soto is at capacity now, and these would be future homes, and so we're trying to make that adjustment before people start moving in.
So I'm wondering, was there not any possibility of taking students that already live to the west of Bell and Soto and moving them instead? Because I understand you're transporting them, but there are parents that need to go for reasons, pick up their children or take them to school for various reasons, doctor appointments, whatever. And it's going to be certainly more out of the way for them.
I don't know, Jody, do you have any feedback?
Board Member Honak, this is Superintendent Gunning. We wanted to look at areas that did not have students currently in and at Belen Soto, so we weren't making an impact to current students who have already acclimated and made connections at their home school. So we took areas where we had started to make those adjustments already. We did those boundary changes about a year ago, and then kind of extended that a little bit to the west, like 26 and 38 are to the west of Belen, and I believe 24 and 25, those areas are just to the north. So it's not necessarily optimal, but it's I think the best for our current students, so that new students moving in, they'll just know where their campus is located and where they would be going and attending school.
Thank you for that explanation.
Superintendent Gunning, I think part of what this conversation needs to incorporate is our future plans. because, like you just mentioned, this particular scenario is not optimal, but can you talk a little bit about what we think the timeline might be for another school, whether that's going to be K through 8 or potentially 2 schools, or kind of where we think, because it sounds to me like this is a temporary solution because we are overcrowded at some of our schools in the western part of our district, and we know there's more growth coming in that area based on the demographers.
So I would anticipate that next year, somewhat around this exact time, that we would be coming to you to discuss the options about going out for a bond in that school year, as well as during those discussions, beginning that conversation about our 2 land options that we have on the west side, what would be optimal or preferential from the governing board at that time of which location they would prefer. We have a location at basically Perryville and Glendale. And then we have the area just west of Scott Libby as another option too. Then also, I think looking at what type of population is coming in. We've seen such a variation. We used to be able to plan and predict pretty well based on the dollar amount of the homes that were being built, about what we would anticipate as age levels. But we've noticed, as even when we built Belen Soda, that we're seeing a drastic difference in age levels or families coming in with a younger and an older student. So then we could discuss about what would that school look like. Would it be potentially a K-8? Could it be potentially a middle school option, or what would we be looking at that time? We like and prefer to offer our families choice like we have now, with having K-8 options, K-5, and middle school options as well.
I have a follow-up question to that. I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, sort of understanding where we're going is going to help us make decisions right now. So I do understand that there are no students currently living in these proposed boundary areas. What is the timeline in which we think students will live there? The reason I ask is that I know several years ago we tried the across 303. It was the opposite direction. It was, the east moving to the west. It was very difficult on students, I feel like, and parents, and that transportation back and forth. So my concern, I understand where we are with Belen Soto. We need to do what we need to do. That school has to be able to thrive, and they can't do that putting more students in the classroom there. But I do have a concern about moving that, or putting those students from 26 and 38, crossing them over to Mabel Paget, and then back to Verrado. I mean, I understand there can't be complete alignment, but what's the timeline in those areas when we think there'll be students? If it's within the next 2 years, can we at least have a discussion again before, those students would be in school, so that we can see if there's anything that has changed prior to them going across the 303 to Mabel Paget?
I think we're seeing the builders progress at different rates. As you can tell, in Area 38, they have not even plotted yet, so they're at the very beginning stages. So that would be further away from building. In 26, you have that one southwest component that they have plotted, but we haven't seen as much movement. So, but we've also seen in various areas where one day they're not moving, and the next day we see large machinery moving dirt. So it's been unpredictable a little bit. So we're just monitoring it really closely. Now with also the home prices changing and interest rates changing, it potentially could slow down a little bit in that process as well. So I forget what Dan, he's the expert. Like when they start moving dirt, he usually has a timeline of like how long before, because they have to put the infrastructure in, so that takes a period of time. And I think once the infrastructure is in, it's usually a 6 to 9 month time frame, but they're still putting infrastructure in those areas.
Yeah, I wouldn't anticipate, just based on if the sort of satellite images that you're showing here are accurate and nothing else has happened. Yeah, I would agree. I think we can have this conversation as we're having the conversation about new schools and potentially a bond and whatever that might mean 12 months from now. I'm comfortable with that, knowing that there's not going to be a lot of movement in these areas in the next 12 months. But just on the whole, I just wanted to voice my concern that we have tried this before. I don't think it was extremely, I mean, it was successful in the sense that it helped us balance out the schools. I don't think it was successful for the students that had to do that. But anyway, if we can talk about it in another 12 months, I'm open to that.
Any other board member questions or comments? Thank you for the presentation. And next steps on this are what, please? We will then approve, or just potentially approve at the next meeting, take action?
So we'll bring it back to you as a proposal for the next meeting. We'll also let you know if we have any feedback, or, you know, if we do receive anything from the community, so that you'll have that information.
Okay,
well.
and then we will revisit this in a year approximately, and we will then determine how many students are in these affected sections, and potentially if we build another school, how that's going to impact everything as well.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Executive Director Qualls. Next up on our agenda is item 1C, which is public comment regarding proposed boundary revisions. Do we have any requests for public comment? Ms. Potapoff? No. Okay. Then we will move on to agenda item 1C, which is tax credit and site council update presentation. This will be presented by Executive Director Qualls and Superintendent Gunning.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, and Superintendent Gunning. So a few months ago, we had a presentation on tax credit, and we were asked to bring back more information regarding plans for the use of those funds. So this presentation aligns with our student success, service, and finance pillars to ensure that we are offering high-quality services to our students. So timeline, the principals have been engaging with their site councils. Some programs are currently active. As far as field trips, this year they can do on-site field trips, so have an event come onto their school campus. We're hopeful that next year we'll be able to resume off-site field trips. And then many of the programs and purchases will happen in the next school year. So they are planning a year ahead right now. So as of April 20th, we had revenue of $113,000, and we had carryover funds. So currently there's around $610,000 available for tax credit. Down below, you can see the different programs that are offered through tax credit and the budget that's available for each of those. And that, again, equals the $610,000. The next column to the right is expenditures or purchase orders that are active. So we anticipate they'll spend around $142,000. So that is a little higher than what we brought in so far this fiscal year. And there could still be more expenditures if they haven't put in their requisitions yet. So at this point, we would have approximately $467,000 to go forward into the next year.
Can I ask a couple of questions on this slide in particular? I understand why we don't have much in the expenditure column for field trips based on COVID and the lasting impacts of that, and we plan to spend that next year. If my understanding is that one of the goals of site councils, or one of the tasks of site councils, is to help determine how the undesignated funds are spent. Why would we not see any movement happening in undesignated fund expenditures this year? Are they just in planning mode to determine how those should be spent next year, or could you tell me more about how that works?
So there could have been activity moving them between, and actually I know there has been some. It's just that I'm showing you the budget at a point in time. So if we went back and looked at the beginning of the year and the changes to the budget, you would see some of the undesignated moving to other categories.
Okay, so tell me again what this expenditure column is. Maybe that's what I'm not. So we have active POs, you're saying, for sports, for example, where we know they're going to spend those monies, but we just don't have any active POs for undesignated right now?
And there wouldn't be any in undesignated because they're supposed to be spent from those categories above. So the money would be moved, the budget would be moved from undesignated into those categories.
So the site councils are determining how to reallocate the funds to the other categories.
Yes.
Okay.
And I believe they're also talking with the principals about using the monies that were donated in the categories. Like, so example would be fine arts. They're also discussing how do we use the fine art money.
Okay. And then where are they getting those guidelines from? So do we provide guidelines as to these are the acceptable uses of these funds? I mean, I just want to make sure that everyone's getting the same information on how these funds can be used and what the options are.
So a few months ago in our presentation to the board, we showed the examples for those, and that presentation was shared with principals. And then also I had discussions with them when I knew they were getting ready to meet with their councils of their site council of what can they do, when would we move the money.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Any other board member questions on this particular slide?
More a statement. I'm interested to see now that we are starting to see the principals be able to come out of COVID and really start planning what these funds might be used for. I noticed in the summary reports that you gave us in our board packet here, how it all breaks down, that several of our schools are using them for sort of, for lack of a better term, I'll call them sort of curricular enhancements, you know, electives or teachers that might be teaching different things and things like that. So I'm interested to see how this correlates to your superintendent goals of sort of just making sure that's equitable across the district, because I think it's very easy to get excited about what some schools are doing, then when you see that other schools don't have the access to specific educational materials, I just get a little concerned, you know. A climbing wall or a garden or something like that that might not be directly relatable to academics is one thing, but I think academics, we need to be just mindful that everyone is having the same opportunities across the board. But otherwise, good presentation. Thanks, Wendy.
You're welcome. So in looking at what the principals have spoke with their councils about, field trips on and off site, sports, you see referees, the umpires, equipment and uniforms. Fine arts, we have supplies, furniture, equipment, clubs, and electives. And then for before and after school, we see the same types of things, sort of supplies, furniture, registration fees, stipends to pay the teachers for after school programs. In character ed, stipends and supplies. Through June 30th of 2024, there is an exception that tax credits can be used for capital items. That was originally through June of 22. They extended it to 24. So we do see schools looking at rock walls, shade structures, library books. So that is just another 2 years that they'll be able to take advantage of that exception.
Jeremy Honak here, have some questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Honak.
Thank you. A little hard to maneuver here with the different screens and stuff. So I'm back a little bit. I have some questions that a previous slide where the site councils were established a year ago and or in the last year. And so according to ARS 15351, each group specified shall select its school council appointees, shall submit names of respective representatives to the principal. Initial ones shall be selected at public meetings. And thereafter, there are ratios of, at least half have to be from the public or parents, and posted in 3 different locations. My question is, were these procedures followed? Because my concern is that not all parents or members of the community were even aware of the formation of these site councils. And I know quite a few parents and members of the public that were unaware of it and feel very left out, and they were very active and seemed to be actively pursuing finding out. One communicated with Principal Lukey at Verado Elementary, asking if he had any plans. He said at that time he was thinking about starting one, and evidently this person didn't seem to get much information. Another one communicated by email with then Board President Daniel Clymer, who stated, I also wanted to contact you after your comment on site councils. I agree of the importance. I'd love to work together, but basically that indicated, at least at that time, that the procedure was not being followed or somehow didn't work out because those people didn't get the information to know where to go or apply, and they indeed wanted to be on it. So now I'm asking, when these site councils were formed, how were the parents, community members notified and selected? Because certainly there are parents and community members who wanted to be involved. And also, where can I find a list of the site councils, who is on them, and what role does each member play? I think this is not a, you'll look into this answer. I think we need to know the answers to some of these questions at this point.
Superintendent Gunning, would you like to address that?
Yes. Board Member Honak, our principals communicated with their families in their regular communication format, which is email to their families as well as posted on their website. For the campuses that had multiple parents or community members and or teachers that were interested, they went through an election process. They also kept those records so that if anyone left the site council and they needed to replace them, they just went to the next person in line.
Okay, so where, I guess two things. Where is it, are these site councils posted anywhere? The bylaws, all the things that should have happened, who the members are, go ahead and give that one a shot.
The site council information is posted on each individual school's website.
I will
Okay,
interject and just say that I happened to be looking at Mabel Padgett's website this week and saw their minutes from their last site council, as well as the scheduled date for the next site council, as well as a list of all of the members and their roles, at least at that. I haven't looked at all of the websites, but I can say that Mabel Padgett is definitely in compliance with this regulation.
okay, thank you. And I can pass that information on, that was evidently available. The next thing that I have is that under school LESD board policy CFD Charlie Foxtrot Delta, school-based management, the authority extended to school councils to design curricular and instructional strategy design models that promote the district mission goal statement. A lot of what we see on the PowerPoint is for rock walls and sports and things like that. Didn't notice anything about curriculum. And further, I just want to say that according to ARS section 38-431.02 parentheses H close parentheses, when we're on the board speaking, we can discuss, quote, other matters related, close quote, to the agenda, and quote, they must be in some reasonable manner be related to an item specifically listed on the agenda. In this case, determining curriculum, the site council would be compelled to adhere to the equity statement and the diversity, equity, inclusion goals. So they are 100% related to the discussion of, quote, tax credit and site council update presentation, which is agenda item 1D, which is the current agenda item. So,
Well, I don't think that I guess I would like for Superintendent to go ahead and give a better explanation as to the curriculum process in our district and how that is or is not related to site councils.
well, can I finish my question, or should I wait and then resume it after this interruption by Superintendent Gunning.
This is Kimberly Moran, President Moran, interrupting to provide clarification because I'd like to make sure that you have appropriate facts before additional statements are made. So I think it would be a good teachable moment for everyone involved to have a better understanding of site councils and their role in curriculum and the board's role and how we use policy to approve curriculum.
Well, then can we just clarify, is tax credit and site council update presentation currently on the agenda, item 1D?
I am not saying that anything you're discussing is not on the agenda. I would just like for you to have a better understanding of how curriculum is actually approved in this district. Superintendent Gunning, could you please address that?
Sure. Madam President, members of the governing board, so our curriculum process that we would typically go through for an adoption of curriculum as a district is very standardized, where it includes committees, review of several curriculum, public comment, public input, as well as staff input. When they're talking about curricular as far as a site council, it's looking at something that's not a district level curriculum, but something that would be utilizing their resources at their site to add something additional. So an example might be if we had not authorized funds to set aside for like Leader in Me, that would be something that you would bring to your site council and say, this is something that we think we need or we would like to support in the relation of character education and gain input and feedback. If it was something like a program like, I don't know, we purchased it as a district, but let's just say we didn't, like No Red Ink, which is used in middle schools. That would be something you would take to your site council to obtain feedback and input. But from a district level, we have our district level curriculum process and policies that we follow and that are implemented district-wide.
And those incorporate the initial. Can you just give us an overview as to what that looks like, the time frame involved? I know we just did that with the math curriculum, but could you just give us an overview of that process?
The time frame takes actually anywhere from 6 to probably 9 months is the process, because you want to present to the governing board that you're going to analyze or look at a change or an addition into curriculum. You want to be able to pilot multiple options. You want to be able to have those, they are on display, I believe, for 60 days, Gina? How long is the display of the 60 days for public comment, which we do always in our, or have done over the last several times in our district office and the conference room, where anyone can come in to review the curriculum and provide input or insight or ask questions. And then taking in all the feedback from staff as well as community, then present to the governing board for approval. So it's a pretty long, lengthy process.
Okay, thank you.
Jeremy Honak again.
Go ahead, Board Member Honak.
Yes. So that's wonderful, how that explanation of how curriculum is done in the district. However, it is in conflict with LESD Governing Board Policy CFD, which states for school councils, the authority extended to these school councils is to design curricular and instructional strategy design models that promote the district mission, goals, and statement. So what I heard from Superintendent Gunning did not include any participation of the school councils as mandated by Litchfield Elementary School District Governing Board Policy CFD. And that is the avenue that I want to pursue as my discussion and my question.
Well, I'm not sure that that is an accurate interpretation. I think we might need to seek some additional expert viewpoint on the interpretation of that particular policy. Do we have any other board members that might have some thoughts on that?
I actually have a thought that the school policy CFD, everybody in the public, everyone can look at it right now. Go to lesd.org, school board, look at the policies, go to CFD. And the plain words in English are, the authority extended to the school councils is to design curricular instructional strategy models that promote the goals. So I asked Board President Moran, are you now basically wanting to suppress my free expression to discuss this board policy based on that we have to get some experts to go look at it because you don't understand the plain words in English?
Well, I believe every board policy is subject to interpretation, and I like to rely on expert interpretation. That's my personal
We
philosophy
are
as a board
experts.
member.
We're board members. We are the ones that created the policy, our board and previous ones. What other experts are there?
We have legal experts, we have legislative experts, the people who actually create the legislation that then we interpret through these board policies. Board Member Clymer?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Jeremy, I have a question for you. I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So are you saying that the site councils, I'm not sure which direction you're going. Are you saying that you want the site councils to have more input into district level curriculum? Or are you saying that you would like the site councils to have more impact on their school level sort of extracurricular programs?
Thank you, Board Member Clymer, for asking a very good question. It's neither of those. I never was allowed to get to my question because I was interrupted by Board President Moran that claimed that Ms. Gunning needed to explain. She, in fact, explained LESD policy of how curriculum is developed and ignored the question of school councils, what we're talking about on the agenda right now today. My question is that right now, the school council, in making a question or in their designing curriculum and instructional strategy, are constrained by an equity statement that was, the original equity statement was passed in violation of the open meeting law, in the words of the Attorney General, because the governing board hid it. And then on August 10th, the governing board passed a new equity statement violating the open meeting law in the exact same way. And a $5,000 survey the day before said the public hates the idea of an equity statement, ranking it 7th and last in their priorities. The minutes of the August 10th meeting show that a majority of board members expressed serious doubts that the public was properly informed and that the board was not ready to pass a new equity statement on August 10th due to lack of feedback. But the board went ahead, risking committing the same open meeting law violation. The board immediately passed the second equity statement, again with no discussion. I
Those statements are
requested.
not true. I am interrupting you because those statements are not true. Those are not based in fact. The board had an open discussion at the August 10th meeting regarding the revised equity statement. There was available commentary from the public. That discussion and pass of the equity statement was in no way a violation of any laws. In addition, the pass of the first equity statement was not in violation of open meeting law. The open meeting law violation was in regards to the committee that did not write or recommend the equity statement. I would appreciate you using the facts and truth when we are having a board discussion.
Board member, Board President Moran, every word I said is absolutely the truth. It is in the minutes, and you're the one that is not telling the truth. And by the way, the Attorney General did find you guilty of not hiding from the public and suppressing free speech of the public, as well as by
That is not
inference me.
true.
It is
That is
100%
not
true.
Mr. Honak.
The public, you're please welcome to go look at, you can go to honacforschools.com. I will send you the
This is
Attorney
not an
General's letter
advertisement
citing
for
her
Honak for
violations.
schools. Please
Now she's
stay
talking
on
over
topic,
me again.
Which is the,
I would like to say something, if I can. Get
Please
in
do.
here. We were talking a few minutes ago about the site councils, were we not? Were we?
Yes.
Come on. We were. We were talking about whether they can impact curriculum at their schools. I would like to determine right now, are the site councils in any way changing our curriculum, decentralizing what they're doing in those schools? Is that happening
You mean from a district level
from this
curriculum?
district? Are
Not
these,
not at a district level. So like the math curriculum that was adopted going into next year, as well as the ELA curriculum that was adopted previously, it is an expectation that every school and every campus is utilizing the district-approved curriculum.
and the district verifies that, checks with it? You have pacing charts, do you not? You know
Correct.
where
Correct.
every school in the 7th grade math, virtually
Has a-
every school should be at the same spot. So if one
Correct.
student left one school and went to the 7th grade somewhere else, I would hope that they would be basically on the same thing,
Right.
unless you have some remedial support and enrichment for those kids who are there and some help for those kids who aren't.
Absolutely. And it aligns with our benchmarks.
What Jeremy's referring to is policy CFD, school-based management, in which governing boards may delegate the responsibilities to the school councils to develop a curriculum, and it may give them additional powers that are necessary to accomplish decentralization.
You're accurate.
Okay? I'm one board member. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see decentralization. This is a business. We're in the business of educating our kids. Has there ever been, the site councils, have they ever got into talking about curriculum? Or pretty much the site councils I've seen over time have done exactly what is in here. The book fairs, things of that nature.
Correct, Dr. Dowling.
So I understand what Jeremy's saying. It states in here that they may influence creation of curricular and instructional strategies and designs that meet the unique learning needs of the students served at each school. We have people who run that school, the administrators. We have instructional coaches. We have people who understand how to deliver that, hopefully, and to deliver that instruction to those students so we can get the maximum amount of opportunities for these kids to be successful. And that's what we're here for.
Correct.
That's what we're here for.
Right. And it also states about 6th paragraph down, the shared decision-making shall not supersede the board or superintendent, unless waived by the board, and the board has not waived any of those.
thank you for the clarification. I agree with you, Dr. Dowling. I do not support decentralization or any individual school action that would supersede our authority as board members.
Jeremy Honak, I don't support decentralization. The very words, though, say the authority extended to the school councils is to design curricular and instructional strategy design models. Those words are very unambiguous. And the reason that I believe it's in there in the idea of school councils is the parents and the community members in that particular school region are entitled to have some say. Maybe there's something in the district-wide curriculum they really do not like, or maybe they think there's something in the district that they think needs to be added. There's no question that they should have control over all the other schools, but at this point, it is clear that at least they have some control or at least those words say they have some control over their particular school. And that is what I'm talking about. And that's how this is related. I'm not advocating for any power that those words don't say they already have. I'm simply saying that they are constrained by an equity statement that at the very least, everybody can agree the public hates. A $5,000 survey says so. And Ms. Moran, President Moran, is utterly incorrect. And she has 2 open meeting law violations, according to the Attorney General, that she cannot refute to firm up that point. Thank you.
Jeremy, what is it that you would like specifically to happen here? Do you want the policy to change? Do you want to give site councils more or less authority as it relates to this? I understand what you're saying, but I don't know what the implementation of that is. What exactly would you like to see happen as it relates to the site councils? This is Danielle Clymer, I'm sorry.
Jeremy Honak answering Ms. Clymer's, Board Member Clymer's question. What I would like to see happen is what I requested on November 29th, is to repeal the equity statement on the agenda. And in view of the site councils, there's an urgency. I requested that it be put on for this meeting. It was not. It's put on for June 28th. I don't know what that date is, except for that it's sort of in the indefinite future, Neverland, and when it should be discussed right now. It is oppressive to tell in this policy that that site council people should have a say in directing curriculum and designing curriculum when they're constrained by what is essentially a equity statement and a diversity, equity, inclusion statement, which is the same thing, that has been imposed upon them against their wishes.
Mr. Honak, the site councils are constrained by all of our board policies. And not everyone agrees on those. But as a board, we consist of 5 people who are able to create policy. We are who the constituents have elected, and as a board, that is one of the statements that we have made. So yes, the site councils are constrained by that statement, as they are all of our policies.
Well, thank you. It's Jeremy Honak for that explanation. So evidently, we'll just leave it there that the Litchfield Elementary School Board institute policies ignoring the public's wishes, which is their duty. Thank you.
Thank you for your opinion. I would beg to differ on that. Are there any other questions or comments on site councils or the tax credit update? Thank you, Superintendent Gunning. We will now move on to study session item 1E, which is Superintendent Goals Update, the Student Satisfaction Survey Results, which will be presented by Superintendent Gunning.
President Moran and fellow board members, we'd like to present our student engagement survey results. So this past year, we've shared our employee engagement, and now we'll move on to our student engagement. I believe we did our parent one too. I don't know, it's all becoming a blur over the last few months. Yeah, this aligns directly to our strategic plan. It is a mode in which to, a method in which to provide feedback to us. It's all about continuous improvement, so obtaining survey results, rolling out and obtaining input, designing action plan to improve, and then monitoring that progress and reviewing the results next year. The purpose is a transparent communication process for leaders to share the data with stakeholders to identify priority actions, communicate next steps for continuous improvement. We share the data with staff and stakeholders to gather additional feedback and develop improvement strategies, and have a transparent communication process that includes collective analysis of the data to develop specific new actions that should improve results. Included are some sample survey questions. A total of 6,752 students participated in the current survey. The district's overall mean was a 3.75 using a scale of 1 to 5, and about 32% of all the responses were in the strongly agree or top box category. You can see over the last several years where we have sat. So in the 1920, it was 3.77. Then as we got into the start of COVID, it was a 4.0. And then currently we have 3.75. Top boxes remains similar.
I have a question
Sure.
on the survey results. I believe it was Jeremy that brought it up. I thought it was a good idea. A percentage by question on their responses, similar to what we had with the staff, where we sent it back out with the percentages for each. Can we do that for this also?
Sure, we can include that in a
I
Friday
guess my
update.
question would be, you knew about this, why didn't you do it on this?
Probably because this was already created months ago, and I probably just slipped my mind and didn't think to go back and recreate it or add in that information.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see the percentages, the same format that we had for the,
Yeah, we can do that. So in looking at the score, we have a designated chart for each school or each campus based on their score. So if you fall within that 3.75 to 3.99, you're anticipating your goal to increase by a 0.10 the next year. The highest scoring items were learning is important at my school, my principal is a good leader, and my teacher cares about me, with almost 50% in all of those in the top box. The lowest scoring items were students are nice to each other at my school, there is healthy food for me to eat at lunch, and my school is clean. Individual schools have received their results. They'll roll out, will be done in May and August to identify specific action steps. Remember, this is from the student survey. Earlier in the year, we looked at employee and department survey. Next month, we'll actually roll out parent survey. So we have that right there for you. And the great thing to look at those, going back, if we look at highest scoring items, what they'll do is they'll obtain feedback also from the students of what do we do that's so well in these areas so that they can continue doing those things, and then gaining feedback from a student perspective on what would a 5 look like of students being nice to each other, of having healthy choices of food to eat, and your school being clean. So,
Superintendent Gunning, do you think that 2 of these bottom lowest scoring items, the healthy food for me to eat at lunch and the my school is clean, have to do with the changes due to COVID? Because obviously I know the lunch options are not what they once were because of our staffing, as well as we didn't want to have the staffing in our custodian and janitorial staff as well. Do you think those are things that will correct themselves as we get back to our regular staffing?
I do believe that. So we did have a lot of limitations in regards to food options. So I think that will, because they, especially our older students, right? They know what they had before COVID, and then they know what they have now as options. So I think that's the definite comparison, as well as with custodial staff and being able, in grounds, to be able to
Because
maintain.
didn't we have to eliminate the salad bars, which I know were very famously popular with the kids?
We did.
That's obviously a big
We
healthy
did.
choice. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Any
Oh.
other?
yeah.
Go ahead.
I've got a question. You mentioned the food options before COVID and after COVID. Help me to understand what you're talking about.
So before COVID, we had, they usually had the choice between, I believe, 2 entrees. So they had options with their entree, but then they also had a full salad bar that they could make their salad with fruit, different salad options to add on. So that was something that the students really enjoyed and that we celebrated a lot throughout the years, and that had to go away due to COVID. And we had to, and then due to staffing, we moved to a lot of like packaged items, easier to prepare items that they could prepare in bulk to be able to get out to all the campuses.
Do they, I go to a place called Barrow's Pizza.
Right.
Everybody go there for the lunch special? You get a salad and a slice of pizza or whatever it is and a drink. It used to be you pile it on yourself. Now the girl or the whoever the cashier is, she takes it over there, or he takes it over there.
And
I point out what I want. By the time I get done, it's about that high. And I can't eat it. And they put too much on there to start, so I got nothing left for the good stuff. Is there any options for this to happen for these kids to where they can pick it out, point at it, and someone on the other side can put it in there?
I think that could be a possibility in the future if we're staffed appropriately. So we were operating this year, I believe, at about 50% capacity in staffing, and actually
Yeah.
sharing some of the cooking from one school, like transporting food, cooking it at one campus and actually transporting it to another.
It doesn't surprise me on the healthy food to eat. If it's not in the bag and the can opener, it's not a chip or it's not cookies or something. It's not, I don't like it, and that's healthy, but this is not.
Right.
So that doesn't surprise me at all. That's all I have.
Any other board member comments or questions on the student engagement survey?
Just a comment. It makes me really happy to see that our kids know that learning is important and that they know that their teachers and their principals care about them. I'm glad that those are our top things. If I were going to pick the top 3 things, I think that's what I would pick. So I'm really happy to see that our students know that they're cared about and that learning is a priority here.
I agree.
I also agree. Thank you, Board Member Zeidema. Any other comments or questions? Excellent. Then we will move on to Agenda Item 1F, which is Human Development Curriculum Discussion. This will be presented by Superintendent Gunning.
I'm going to defer to Executive Director Gina DeCoste, since she's the expert in this area.
Excellent. I like to hear from an expert. Thank you, Executive Director DeCoste.
President Moran and members of the board, thank you. You asked to have this placed back on the agenda after a meeting in December when we suspended our human growth and development lessons for this year due to a change in legislation where we were not in compliance with what they were asking. So it's really for your discussion and for me to answer questions on whether this is something that you want us to pursue as far as looking for a curriculum for next year or the following year throughout the time. Because it is a lengthy process, as we talked about a little bit ago, with the curriculum adoption. But I do want you to keep in mind that what we did before was one lesson in 5th grade, and it was basically about what happens to your body as you change and grow older. Boys did a lesson, girls did a lesson, parents signed permission slips, they watched a video, it was called Just Around the Corner. And that was the one time in May. And then in 7th grade, it was a very similar situation where girls and boys separated, permission slips were signed, and it was a district created lesson, very similar to human growth and development. But because I think when we reached out to our attorney about it, because we thought it really was human growth and development and sex education was not a part of it, but abstinence was mentioned in the 7th grade one, and therefore that could trigger it being considered a sex education curriculum. So that's why we decided to go ahead and suspend it for this school year.
Okay, so that's the piece, just for full clarification. The piece that was not in compliance with the current legislation is that we mentioned the word abstinence in some shape or form, and so that was then considered to be sex ed versus more a biology lesson in human development.
That's not the piece that was out of compliance. What was out of compliance is the new regulation that, and I'll just read it straight from legislation, that a district or charter school with existing sex education curricula So this is where the discrepancy is, because we were thinking it's really not sex education curricula, it's more human growth and development. Shall include instruction on the law relating to sexual conduct with a minor for pupils in grades 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So if we were to continue with our district curriculum, we would have had to incorporate a piece in there about the laws relating to sexual conduct with a minor for our 7th grade students. And we just weren't comfortable throwing that together and putting that out to our kids without really knowing what that meant or seeing any models. We reached out to districts around us. Most K-8 districts do not teach human growth and development or sex education. And the ones that do, there were a couple that, one district, Wickenburg, I think, they have their own that they've created. It's only for 7th and 8th graders. And there's another district that uses something called Draw the Line, Respect the Line, which, you know, you can look into these if you want to. I thought was a little too much. And the thing is, what we want to remember is that it was 2 lessons. So we don't want to necessarily adopt an entire curriculum that's going to add to our teachers' already full plates, or possibly our PE teachers, or, you know, how we would work an entire curriculum into our district right now.
Thank you for that background. I will just begin with my personal commentary and thoughts on this, which are that I think it is important for students to be aware of what is happening to their bodies during this tumultuous time of hormones and growth. I am not an advocate of us having a curriculum that would interfere with any parental opinions on sexual activity or sexual orientation or anything like that. But what I would like to see is a basic biology lesson that would be covered. I don't have specifics on to when that would be, if it should still be 5th and 7th grade, but I do think that boys and girls learning the facts about what's happening to their bodies from a reliable source, which I think the schools are, is a good idea. I would like to open the floor for any other board member comments or questions.
When we had this, what did you call it, health, or what was the subject called?
Human growth and development.
It was the same name?
It was, yes, it was called, for the 5th grade students, it was called Just Around the Corner, and it was published by Marsh Media, and it's a rather old presentation, basically. I wouldn't even say a curriculum, because you think of a curriculum as something that's ongoing. It's a one-time presentation.
Where would we go to look for something that, a curriculum? I went online and I saw one out of Catalina Foothills Unified School District down in Tucson that was designed in 2015. And it was based on the previous revised statute from around 2015. It seems okay. There was a couple of things that were mentioned in there. It was psychosocial. Can anybody clarify that?
I don't know. I looked at theirs too, and I can't really speak to it because it's been a month or so, but they're also a high school district, so they may be
Understood, but the curriculum went to the 9th grade.
Yeah.
Specifically, it stopped at the 9th grade.
Oh, it stopped at 9th grade.
What they had, and this is what I kind of liked, a disclaimer, if you would. At all levels, lessons shall not include tests, psychological inventory, surveys, or examinations containing any questions about the student's or his or her parents' personal beliefs or practices in sex, family life, morality, values, or religion. At no time would that be part of any discussion. That being said, is this a required curriculum? Is this an opt-in or an opt-out for parents? Because I have a preference. I'll let you guess what it is.
We have to have parent permission in order to do any of this, but it's not required by state law for us to teach human growth and development or sex education.
It's not required for an opt-in or opt-out?
Parents have to opt in.
It's an opt-in.
Well, I need to look, I see what you're saying, sorry.
So in our past,
Yes.
it was an opt-in.
Yeah.
It's an
So,
opt-in.
so we had to receive your permission slip for you to participate, otherwise you didn't
Yeah,
participate.
and then
And
those
we-
kids go here, the other kids go to some,
And then we had the materials available or the videos available for any parent to come in and view them first if they would like to. And so a lot of times they would come in and sit in the nurse's office or in a conference room and view the material. So I think it is not a requirement to have the curriculum, if that makes sense. So it was something that we did. A lot of districts did not do it, and we did it for years.
and it is a requirement now. here.
It's an opt-in. They switched it from an opt-out
That's-
to an
that's what- that's what I
opt-in in
fi- that's what I
legislation.
figured.
Yeah,
That's-
but it's
yes.
not a required curriculum to do. So we don't have to do a human growth development. It would be up to the board of deciding if we did that.
That was my question.
I would like to see us figure out how to bring this back because it's not some long drawn out curriculum. It's a one-time thing in 5th grade, a one-time thing in 7th grade, and it is opt-in. So parents have to know what's happening and have to agree with it. So I think that it's a good thing to do because we do have kids that have things happening and they don't know and they don't understand because we have kids coming into this district from different places and spaces. And so this might be the only place where they're getting that information even. And so I think it's important to have a very important discussions with our kids about what's happening to their bodies. So I think it's something we should look at trying to bring back and make sure we're complying with the law.
Jeremy Honak. I think that it was very wise of the district to not do it this past year, if I'm understanding correctly. I think that the legislature is correct in not requiring it. The legislature, I do think it's important that 7th graders and 8th graders, ones in the higher end of the scale, that they, and maybe even a little earlier, need to understand the laws very clearly about sexual contact with minors. Because if they do understand the laws very well, that is going to be a deterrent. And I think a lot of kids kind of feel like they're in a little dream world, artificial world, which they kind of are, and that things don't necessarily apply to them, the realities of the world. So I think in that part of it is education. I think biology in the normal progress of where it is appropriate for kids, of course, that should be taught as part of science. I think that human growth development is a misnomer. It's a term. I did a little bit of research and found out how it's implemented in various school districts. And it is clearly a Trojan horse for inappropriate sex education. For instance, in the Milwaukee school district, I have the link. I'm not going to give it here, but you can go there and look at human development, click English. I just looked at 3rd grade. They have it in 1st grade through whatever grade. I looked at 3rd grade, chapter 11, page 51, My Awesome Body, and is talking about penis, vulva, testicles, breasts. Kids at that age are basically do not want to hear about those terms. And they justify this with the National Health Education Standards primary focus. Students will comprehend concepts related to health promotion and disease prevention to enhance health. And another one, a secondary focus standard for students demonstrate ability to use communication skills to enhance health and reduce health risks. What health risks are we talking about with children in elementary school? Are 3rd graders having sex and at risk of STDs? This is just a very misguided, slippery slope once you open the door. And we can't monitor every single teacher to know how they're going to interpret things and what they're going to feel is appropriate when they talk about things in their classroom, as a lot of parents found out when they watch Zoom meetings of their kids in school. So I agree with the legislature. I agree with the policy that we keep it out, and that we do educate them on the laws regarding child sex, and that we do normal biology. Thank you. Jeremy Honak, ending this for right now.
Thank you, Mr. Honak. Board Member Zaidama?
Melissa Zaidama. Just like Jeremy said, it's important that our kids know the laws. That's important. It is also very important that children know the proper names of their body parts. I have spoken with many people who work with children who have been victims of sexual abuse, and one of the biggest problems that they have when these things happen and they're trying to talk to these children to find out what exactly happened is that the kids can't accurately say what's happened or what parts of their bodies were touched or what has happened because they don't know. So I don't agree that telling our kids the proper names for things is somehow harming them. We want to make sure that we're teaching them the proper names. I'm in no way advocating that we need to be teaching full-on sex ed in our schools, and we don't do that. And the video just around the corner, you can Google it and watch it right now if you'd like to see what our kids were getting in their one-time lesson that they learned in 5th grade in their classes.
And
Jeremy,
the control there from a district standpoint is that we would review the curriculum and we would approve maybe we call it a presentation instead of curriculum, because it's, again, not a lengthy process. It's a usually 1 hour maybe discussion that happens in 5th grade and a 1 hour discussion that happens in 7th grade. But the control there from a district standpoint is that we would review that and approve that, and that once again parents would be able to come and view that in advance before they would opt their child in. I guess I would like at this point to maybe ask each board member related to, it sounds like there's kind of 3 things maybe that this is going to summarize into, or you might have a better suggestion, Executive Director DeCoste. It sounds like there's the law piece, which is one piece of it. Sexual contact with a minor is the law, correct, that the legislature wants to be addressed if we are addressing sex ed. So law/sex ed is one piece. And then biology is human growth something separate from that? I guess I don't know. I think there's only 2 pieces. Maybe there's the biology human development piece and the law sex ed piece. I'll start with you, Board Member Clymer. Would you like to see one or both of those addressed, or would you like to see, I guess the third option is we don't address any of it. We remove the curriculum.
Excuse me, Jeremy Honak, point of information, and then we can go on to that little exercise of categorizing. And just responding to board member's item about the name of the kids need to know the names. I was on a grand jury for 4 months. Actually, I was the clerk, the one that actually wrote the indictments or filled them out. And I can tell you right now that when this is investigated, investigators don't need kids to explain the correct terminology. They know exactly how to find out, and they use little models and little dolls and things like that. So there's no need at all. And if you can ask any investigator, police, there's no need that kids need to know the right terminology so they can correctly report the crime. Anyway, that's all. Just wanted to put out that point of information. Thank you.
Thank you for your opinion. Board Member Clymer? Again, option 1 is law/sex ed. Option 2 is biology/human development. Option 3 is remove, or I guess option 4 would be both.
I'm still unsure exactly what the law/sex ed option is. I'm the least in favor of that. Of the 2, I do think that the human development or growth piece of it is important. I like the idea of 5th and 7th grade. I'm not in favor of going lower than 5th grade at this point. What was the third? Or
Would
not
you
doing either one of
remove the
them?
curriculum or both?
No, I do think it is important, and I like the idea of keeping it as an opt-in. Parents can review, parents can talk to the teachers or their curriculum experts at their school to better get an idea of what that is. But I do think this is important. To Melissa's point, there are a lot of kids that have open and honest conversations with their parents at home, and there's a lot of them that don't, unfortunately. And it's important for that part of their education to get at least the bare minimums in terms of human growth and what's happening to their body. So I'm in favor of that.
Dr. Dowling.
Go over those options again.
Option number 1 is the law option, the new legislature option, which includes sex ed that goes over the laws about sexual contact with a minor.
So can I clarify
Yes, go ahead.
something with that?
Yeah.
If the curriculum is considered sex education, then it must have that component.
Okay.
So it might possibly be because both of our items were reviewed by our attorney at the time, back in November or October, and it is possible that actually just around the corner would not necessarily qualify by itself as a sex ed curriculum because it strictly addresses human growth and development, but maybe the 7th grade district created one was.
Okay.
We'd have to break that down. So that's the difference. So if you're saying you want them to learn about the law regardless of whether it is, but if it's considered sex education curriculum, then it would be. But I feel like what you're saying is stay away from sex education curriculum and more toward the biological human growth and development piece, in which it's possible if, we were advised that we wouldn't have to necessarily have that law in there about laws with contact with minors.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, I think that clearly articulates where I was.
Yeah.
Staying away from the sexual education component. Now, I guess we'll have to see what we come up with, and obviously we follow all laws and regulations, but if we can stay away from that and more towards the human growth and development, that would be my preference.
Okay.
Okay, so Dr. Dowling, the options are
So the options are
sex ed,
out,
human development, biology, neither, or both.
okay. I don't have an issue of discussing it. Now, we're talking what grade levels, so we're specific. Once we leave here, I want to be specific. We're talking 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, correct?
Previously, it was 5th and 7th. It does not have to be that. There is no requirement. That is just historically what we had done. This could be a 6th grade thing. Could be a one-time lesson in 6th grade that kind of hits right in the middle there between the 5th and the 7th as before.
Yeah, I think we need to decide on the grade level. We have to decide on the components of it. Now, again, I'll defer to what I'm saying here at Catalina Foothills. The one area that is an area of concern for me, not necessarily concern, but tread lightly. They refer to as anatomy and physiology, and what you were talking about, the body parts, et cetera. Let's tread lightly on that. But other things I'm seeing in here is well worth talking about. And how many times, this is just a one-shot deal. Yeah, I'd like to see it brought back with some input from parents, concerns about what's, like we have 3 parents right up here. I'm a parent, but I don't have kids in the school district. And I know I look a lot younger, but you would think I'd have kids in kindergarten or something, but I don't. Yeah, so what option am I?
I don't know. Are you sex ed? It sounds like you're maybe not so into the sex ed piece, but more into the human development, but I don't want to interpret for you.
I think more towards a discussion on human development. And like I said, from what I've researched, it's doing the research yesterday, it is all over the board on this. You Google this human development, Dr. Google, and you'll find a million different things. You can find the things that Jeremy referred to, and you can find some halfway decent things here homegrown within the state of Arizona. So I'm more with the human development angle of this.
Thank you. Board Member Zaidama?
Does that make sense?
I'm in favor of staying away from sex ed and all of that, but sticking with the human development. And I would not want to move it away from 5th grade and only into middle school, just throwing that out there now, because we have girls, I'm a mom of girls. Girls are starting their menstrual cycles in elementary school, so we need to make sure that they are knowing what's happening, hopefully before it happens, so.
Board Member Honak?
Jeremy Honak here. I am 100% for what the legislature is for. I believe that that definitely the law should be explained at all grades. And but as far as the law about and I'm not sure how early it should be explained to kids that, you know, if their uncle comes and visits and touches them inappropriately or whatever, I don't know. I think that in the right, without terrifying kids and turning them into paranoid and whatever, but I think the laws should be understood by kids when they're old enough to understand that there are laws. I'm not an expert, so I don't see any harm in explaining the laws. And if a certain amount of terminology needs to be, you know, explained, that where touching is allowed and not allowed, seems to be like regions of the body would suffice. So the legal part, I'm all for. The biology part, I'm all for, as is age appropriate and not specifically targeted to sex. For anything with the word human development on it, for the reasons that Dr. Dowling just explained, it's all over the map. The last thing we need is to adopt something that is in the eyes of the beholder. And human development is a terminology that can cover you name it. And if you go look, a lot of it's not good. It looks like grooming young children for things that we'd rather not have to address. And I understand kids that are approaching puberty have issues and stuff. I think that falls within biology, and I think that's fine. And all different species go through that phase, and including humans in that discussion of biology, I think is poignant and purposeful, and should be. I agree with Ms. Zaidama that as is needed, it is a health issue, but beyond that, in the context of this vagueness of human development, once you give it that stamp of approval, then you're opening the door to anything, because anybody can come along and say it means this or that. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, we will do our jobs of approving the presentations as a board, which will not give our teachers free rein to interpret human development into whatever their own interpretation might be. My preference would be to focus on biology and human growth. So it sounds like the consensus of the board is to focus on the biology and human growth components, and that we would like to continue in 5th and 7th grade, unless after there's research done, there would be a different recommendation from the administration, but it sounds like that is the place that we would like you to continue at this point. Do you have any clarifying questions, Executive Director DeCoste?
I just have a few comments that may lead to more questions, but it would be my preference to start the process at the beginning of the school year when I can get active parent involvement, because I do think this is a huge right and responsibility of parents, and we need to get as much feedback and input from them as we possibly can, and basically have parental approval before we're bringing anything to the governing board. So plus we're going to be hiring a new director of curriculum some here down the line really soon. Give them a chance to get on board, but I think the beginning of the year, take the time with the process, really actively involve our parents and our community, kind of like some of you when we did boundaries a few years ago, and we just really worked it through with the community before we came to a consensus on the boundaries, and we came forward, and not everybody was happy, but everybody understood what we were up against. In this case, we would like everyone to be happy, but it's also still going to be an opt-in, so parents that are more comfortable only talking to their children about this on their own have the ability to not have their children attend that piece, and they can talk to their children on their own.
So would you anticipate us being able to approve and potentially have our 5th and 7th graders, and I know we talked about there being a gap then in our 6th and 8th graders next year who did not receive this presentation in the current year, by the end of next school year if we start the process in August?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. That's what I would like to see happen, because I wouldn't like to see there be a 2-year gap in this
Right.
particular piece of education. Okay.
Yeah, if we spend a couple of months, a month or two, getting parent input, have a parent committee possibly on this, I'm just thinking down the road, and then what we decide on, we have for view for 60 calendar days. That puts us about 4 months in, so maybe, even if you guys didn't approve something until March, because we never do this until May anyway, so we
Okay.
have time.
Okay, great. Any other questions for us, Executive Director DeCoste?
No, thank you.
Jeremy Honak, first off, President Moran, you said there was a consensus that it was human growth, and I believe the biology, I'm not sure, but certainly that's not a consensus that includes me.
I did not say unanimous. I did not say unanimous. I said consensus.
Okay, well, then I just want to be registered as being that I think that there should be the legal component, which is what the legislature wants us to do. And that part, I believe in following laws. And I think as a school board, we definitely should teach children something that can protect them, which is to explain to them how laws work and how they affect them when their hormones are emerging during adolescence, and they might be tempted. So that part I think is essential. It's a duty that we do that, and probably why the legislature passed that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the third time that we heard your opinion on that, and I do appreciate your feedback. If we are not teaching sex ed, we are not required to teach the law. So the consensus of the board is that we will leave sex ed to the parents or to the high school district, and for parents to opt in at that point in time. But since we're an elementary district, we would like to avoid that topic and focus on biology and human development and growth. Thank you, Executive Director DeCoste.
Thank you.
I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the study session.
I motion to adjourn the study session.
I will second. Having a first and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Study session is adjourned. We will now move on to our next agenda item, which is actually a special meeting. Before I call the special meeting to order, I would like to allow for a 2-minute break. Thank you. ready and available. Board Member Honak?
I'm here.
Excellent. I hereby call this special meeting to order. Our first item on the agenda is item 3B, certified personnel resignation, release of contract, and non-renewals. This will be presented by Director Sanders. Great.
Madam President, members of the board, we present item 3B, certified personnel resignations and release of contract as presented.
Are there any board member questions or comments on this item?
No questions, just we have some long-time, very important employees on this list, so just sad to see them go.
Hearing no discussion, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the resignation, release of contract, certified personnel as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next on our agenda is item 3C.
Madam President, members of the board, we present item 3C, certified personnel employment, position change with new contract and new hire salary exceptions as presented.
Thank you, Director Sanders. Any questions or comments from board members?
Yes, I have a comment. It looks like we have a new hire for the sped cross-cat certified teacher. Can I get an understanding? Can someone let me know the funding source on that sped teacher? Did that teacher replace a contract employee, or we were lucky to happen to find a sped cross-categorical teacher? And I'd like to go back to what I said the last board meeting. I'd like to see the funding source on these positions, M&O, IDEA funds, whatever.
So we can work on that. As far as staffing to be able to do that is going to be a stretch, especially for our human resources department currently at this time.
You don't know how the job is being funded?
We know how the job is being funded, but it is adding more to our department when preparing these reports. We have made some accommodations for our board at the board's request to add additional information to the reports. If the request is to add the funding source, I would like to have that discussion with our department just to ensure that it's not going to create more work. It is just another element of information that's being requested, and we'll just have to study and look at where we would include that. So, as you know, we have a process with personnel action requests, which are PARs, that we use internally. We have multiple approvers within that process. That's just part of our internal procedures. And every position is funded, as approved by the board. When people are hired in positions, they may fill vacancies, they may fill new positions that are approved by the board. So we can look at that, Dr. Dowling.
Okay. Tell me how we can do something like this to where it's easier for you. Is it just moving from a contract to we were lucky to hire a sped teacher and we no longer have to contract out with a grant funding? That's my question. Now, if we want to keep it as simple as funding source just for the sped teachers, does that make it any simpler? Probably not.
So, we would want to probably stay to the same document that you see. We just would have to determine where we want to insert that information. And when you indicate funding source, I would probably have to defer to Wendy Qualls on which fund account, because there are multiple fund numbers within a budget code that represent different numbers.
Yeah, don't give me numbers, because
Not numbers, but, okay. So, yeah, if you could just give us some time to talk through that some more, and we'll let you know what we come up with.
Probably the simple ones would be the M&O, IDEA funds, your indirect cost, if they're supporting a grant, things of that nature, the simple ones.
Yeah, again, we would have to then, create a cheat sheet, per se, so to speak, to know based on what that personnel action form is
Okay.
for that person, what does that represent? So again, it's just, going to take more time for these.
On the personnel, on
yeah.
the action sheet, it has the funding source right on there, probably at the bottom, right?
For a new position, it does.
It does?
If you, well, when you're creating the position is where you see the account code. So it would be when it's initially created.
Okay.
And this
What-
position was created back in 2018. So it's been in place for several years and funded through maintenance and operations. So it's not a new position.
Okay, then can we, if it were a new position, let's say, if it was a contract position and you were funding it out of IDEA, Title II money, so you have contracted positions funded out of that fund, is that correct?
We do not have contracted positions out of the IDEA fund. In the past, we've been told we could not place contracted positions into there. So even if it's a position and it's contracted, it's still a position. It's not a new position if we can hire it rather than contracting it. So we still wouldn't be able to move it to IDEA. That's our current understanding. We are asking for clarification from ADE on that.
Yeah, that would be my question too. If, you can't go from, understand, grants to M&O is supplanting. I understand that. And so you're trying to get clarification on a grant funded position to move.
For contracted.
I mean, a contracted position to
Yes,
move.
because in the past, we were told we could not have contracted
Okay.
positions in the grant.
All right. Okay, that's my question. That's all I got.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments on item 3C? Then I will move to approve item 3C, certified personnel employment position change with new contract renewal salary exceptions as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will take the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is item 3D, classified personnel resignation termination.
Board Member Moran, President Moran, members of the board, we present item 3D, classified personnel resignations, as presented.
Any board member questions or comments on this agenda item?
I move to approve the classified personnel resignation and termination as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is item 3E, classified personnel employment position change with new employment agreement / salary exceptions.
President Moran, members of the board, we present item 3E, classified personnel employment, position change with new employment agreement and new hire salary exceptions. We would like to add the correction of Mr. Nuanez, our new Director of Community Relations, the correct spelling of his name. It should reflect Nuanez.
Thank you. Any board member questions or comments on item 3E? Hearing none, I will move to approve item 3E, classified personnel employment position change with new employment agreement salary exceptions as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
A second?
Having a first and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?